neck snaps, blood splatter, vicious kills and dark, mature themes of violence and death. What's good, my fellow peasants? How you all doing? So I want to talk about, should Final Fantasy be M-rated? This isn't really Final Fantasy 15 focused specifically, though I will talk about it a lot. And it is coming off of Versus XIII and a lot of conversations I've had with people. I spoke about how certain elements were quite clearly cut to make the game more PG, or could have been cut to make it more PG. And I really feel that is the case, because if we do look at Versus XIII, what the 15 project was originally going to be, it was going to, quote, be the dark side of the 13 trilogy. And I think there's without a doubt the fact that there was blood splatter, the fact that there was very, very vicious kills, and just from what I've heard in the rumours, some of the themes it was going to tackle, they were heavy. And I have no doubt in my mind that Versus XIII would have got an M rating slapped on it. But this is what this video is about. Should a Final Fantasy, a mainline Final Fantasy, go M rated? And I'm left surprisingly saying yes. And I say surprisingly because I'm really not one for pointlessly violent games, horror games, GTA games. I'm not a fan of them. But I will be honest, for the first time after seeing it in Versus XIII, seeing blood splatter, seeing really heavy, mature stuff in that game, has kind of made me want it for Final Fantasy. Now, I'm going to do a poll, and I'm going to see what you guys are going to vote. Do you want a Final Fantasy to be M-rated? But before you do that, just let me do this video, because I wouldn't say that this is something I want in all my Final Fantasies. I'm not saying I want this to be a precedence for the Final Fantasy series, but you know what? I actually would just like a game that had an M-rated label slapped on it. And I definitely think it should have been for Final Fantasy 15. And here's the reason why, guys. When we can see that certain very dark scenes were cut, and that there's a real possibility, and I spoke in my last video about how they could have trimmed stuff back if they got a high age rating label slapped on them. I actually had someone come forward. I won't shout them out just in case they don't want their name shouted out, but they've worked at Square Enix. They've been a QA tester on various different projects. Just looking at them, there was the 4 Heroes of Light for the DS. There was also Dragon Quest V, and they've specifically said, when I spoke about Square Enix having a high age rating slapped on them, and then them panicking and having to cut out certain things, they said 100% they were nodding their head, because as a QA tester, they've seen it. And this is the thing, guys. Age ratings have been an issue in video games, and they have actually suppressed a lot of creativity in games, especially when high-ups want it to be pointlessly low. And I say pointlessly low because I do kind of feel like cutting out certain things from 15, if the Lunar scene was cut for the age rating, I think it is pointless. I think doing things like taking out blood splatter and taking out the really dark, heavy stuff is pointless for a title like 15 and like Final Fantasy. For various reasons. The fan base is older. We are older, we are more mature. Mature. I mean, yeah, I know, but you know what I'm saying, guys. And also because I kind of said that, it would affect sales. I said it in my last game. I said, no, it's possible that up to about 10% of people who buy 15 could be under 18 or could even be under 16. And how that would affect sales. But the thing is, that's not even true, guys. But just continuing with what this person who worked as a QA tester said. They said they worked on DQ5 and many other games, but they're going to point out DQ5 in particular because that was one where the ESRB panel, rating panel, they came out and they gave it a really high age rating. And they said that the high-ups panicked. They wanted this game to be a 10+. 10+. So very PG, but it got a teen slapped on it. And the reason it got a teen slapped on it was because it had some naughty jokes in it. It had some sex jokes in it, the kind of subtle innuendo-y jokes, and when they got the teen rating, they panicked, and they actually made this QA tester, they said they had to go back in and completely cut out those lines, and they were hilarious. They said that the game was fucking hilarious before those lines were cut, and it actually hurt them to have to go in and chop up all of these hilarious lines. And they said that DQ5 was still a good game at the end of it, but it was nowhere near as good as when it had those naughty jokes in it. It was much funnier, and it really ruined a good aspect of the game. And the QA tester said they came away feeling like Square Enix had done a disservice to the fan base. So it's happened, guys. And I kind of knew it had happened, but there's a real example for someone who's actually worked on the game saying it. But the reason why I don't think it would even affect sales, and I really don't think it would, guys, because it's actually not illegal in most countries. I'm not going to say this for all, perhaps there's some bloody country out, some fucking Mediterranean island that has a different law, but it's not actually illegal to provide an underage person with a video game. So you can give your 14 or 15-year-old child an 18 plus game. That's not illegal. It's only illegal to sell it to an underage person. And that's the real key difference, guys. There is no way that even if they did stick an M-rated title, that a portion of that 10% who are under the mature bracket, 14, 15 or 16, that they wouldn't still get the game. They would. In fact, they just would, guys. I mean, we've all played, come on, let's be honest, Resident Evil 1. How many of you were under 18 when you played Resident Evil 1? I'm fucking telling you guys. I know for a fact there's loads of you out there. Let me know in the comment section below. I was 10 when I played Resident Evil 1. Now, yeah, that's a bad reflection of my parents. And yes, that shit gave me nightmares for 2 weeks. But the point is that it wouldn't even mean, even if they slapped an M-rated title, that under 18s still wouldn't get the game and play it. But the other thing is, I also think it would sell more. No, if Square Enix, if it is the case that they got a mature rated title slapped on it and they wanted it to be teen, and the reason why they wanted it to be teen, like a lot of video games, is because they think that more people will buy it. If we get the age bracket lower, well, that's a bigger age group that can buy this game, and that will lead to more sales. And that's an extra million people we could sell it to. But that's not true, because for as many games as you will sell extra for getting the mature title lower, I think that if they made an M-rated Final Fantasy, if there was blood splatter on it, if there was those brutal, savage kind of kills that we saw in Versus XIII, that would actually appeal and make more people above 18 go, "Ooh, that looks like a good game. I like that." Why do you think GTA 5 is one of the best-selling games of all time? I mean, it just is. That game is... And what is the main attraction? What is one of the main draws? I'm not going to say it's the only draw, but one of the main draws is the violence. And people are drawn to the violence. And people are drawn to things like God of War because it does have the insane blood splatter and gore. Now, I'm not saying I want a Final Fantasy to be on that kind of level. But for as heavy and dark as you make or violent you make the combat, it will actually attract more people. So I don't think it's even the case, Square Enix, that you would sell less if you made an M-rated title. But getting a bit deeper, why do I want a Final Fantasy to be M-rated? Why did I want Final Fantasy 15 to be M-rated? When Versus 13 showed all of those things, and people were, I want that game, I want that game. And as it became more and more PG, a lot of people were looking back to Versus 13 and going, I'm more drawn towards that still. I do think that the fan base do want that as a whole, and the reason it needed to be in 15 is because it was a fantasy based on reality. And guess what? In a fantasy based on reality, combat and battles and wars and fighting, it's not pretty. In fact, it is bloody, it's brutal, and it's gory, and it's generally gritty and nasty. And that's the thing, you did a fantasy based in reality, or that's what you sold it as. But I'm going to say it straight, guys. Final Fantasy 15 wasn't really a fantasy based in reality by the end of it. Because guess what? When you cut someone, they bleed. When you stab someone through the middle, they bleed. And that's exactly what Versus 13 showed, but it wasn't there by the time 15 came out. And it just makes no sense because you were still kind of showing blood splatter and stuff in the trailers. We go to the Omen trailer. When Noctis sliced that behemoth's throat, I think there was a load of blood that just squirted up the damn wall. So you're kind of advertising blood splatter, but then it isn't in the game. Now, I'm not saying that the combat has to have loads of blood splatter, and I don't have to have the bloody floor sheeted in pools and pools of blood, but it would be nice to, like I'm going to say in Versus 13, when it's not just run a guy through the middle, the guy bleeds. You know what I'm saying, guys? But it goes a bit deeper than just blood splatter. It goes a lot deeper than that. It does go to the themes. It does go to the story. And I strongly maintain that I think the story was affected by age rating issues. But even if it wasn't, I do think it needed to be gritty and more mature. And I think this had to be an M-rated title because also it was fantasy based in reality. So right there, it needed to be an M. But even if you just look at the general story of 15, and this is where some spoilers are going to come in, the world became demons. People became demons in this game, but you didn't actually show that in a realistic way. If this was a fantasy based in reality and the world gets infected by a star scourge, well, guess what? There would be demons who were in the middle of their transitions phase. But the only one we ever saw was Ravus. And that was super peculiar. You know, if the world has turned to demons, there would be a hell of a lot more people in that mid stage and that messed up kind of, you know what I'm saying, guys? Half human, half demon. But the other thing is there would be children. There would be children. Children would get turned into demons. And that's why when I look at Versus XIII, where it said that, you know, people were going to become violent, there was even going to be bloodletting. People were going to cut themselves to try to pour blood, because that would enable them to see dead spirits from the void. And there was a whole load of stuff with spirits from the void. Again, remember, guys, I said Nyx in Kingsglaive, when he was using the king's magic, he heard his dead sister. That was a theme that never really came through, where that tied in. I think there was so much in the final product that were just throwbacks to original concepts, and even in the movie, I think that was another throwback to, there was going to be bloodletting that would allow you to see blood spirits and talk to dead loved ones. There was also going to be children killing other children. Now, you can imagine how dark that would be, guys. You know, imagine a child standing over another child's dead body. Holy shit, that's a mature right there. That would get an M-rated title right there. But you know what? I'd actually like to see it. I'd actually like to see, the other thing was that Luna was slowly going to get iller and iller and iller, and her body was going to physically decline. I'd like to see that. And yes, this all makes me sound like a sadistic weirdo, but I think that would be good to see. And I think it would definitely have been good if you'd have made everything to do with the human population and turning into demons more realistic, and being more like fantasy based in reality, kind of as you sold it. And again, like I said, I think if they'd have done that, if it had that in there, I think it possibly would have even boosted sales. That would have actually been an attraction to more people than how many underage people you actually brought into the game. But there's no point dwelling on it. 15 got the teen rating for whatever reasons. No, do I have any solid proof that anything got cut or themes got cut? I have no solid proof, and we never will. They'll never confirm whether certain dark elements, but we've seen it. We've seen scenes that were whoa, holy crap. No, on the Type 0 kind of level. This thing, Type 0 was a lot darker. That was a mature title. And that had blood, and that had blood on faces and really gritty scenes of death and kind of agony. And that's the thing. I also think 15 should have been it because you had Tabata in charge. And trust me, Tabata just thrives in death and misery. I mean, he just does. If you look at Crisis Core, if you looked at how he killed off Zack Fair, I mean, that was slow, that was gritty, that was really drawn out. They shot Zack God knows how many times, and they shot him again, and then they stood over him and shot him in the face, and the blood and the pain, and you know what I'm saying, guys. I'm not going to say for Type 0 what they did or what happened in that game for spoilers. Zack Fair dying isn't a spoiler. I mean, that shit's been known for 20 years now, so fuck that. But I won't say for Type 0, but that was really drawn out and agonising. And even if you haven't played Type 0, the trailer shows a Chocobo dying, and it showed Izana dying. So that isn't a spoiler, that's in the trailers. And look at how they died. Oh my god, that was heavy. That was dark. And the second I saw that trailer, I knew Type 0 was a game I had to get. And that's the thing, I'm not one of the people who bought Type 0 for the 15 demo. I bought Type 0 for Type 0. And I love that game because it had that maturity in it. It had that dark, and that's just what Tabata does. And honestly, it's kind of criminal that you gave what was Versus XIII a really dark, definitely going to be mature title. Give it to Tabata, who is the King and Lord of Darkness, and force him to make it PG, to make it teen rated, 12 to 13 plus, depending on your country. It's fucking criminal. I mean, it is actually just fucking criminal. But I'm back to dwelling on 15, just talking about the future of Final Fantasy. Would we like to see a title? I really think we would. An M-rated title. I think it would be a refreshing change. I think it would be refreshing to see that to see a Final Fantasy go there. The thing, Final Fantasy have always done something new. They've always pushed a different limit on games, or they've pushed a different aspect. So with 15, it did push the brotherhood and kind of the care, affection and love between male friends. And that was a great mix-up, and that's why when 15 ever tackles anything, Lou, I mean, we know how much the fact there were bros on the road and how there's no females in the party and this is terrible. I liked it because I like Final Fantasies to tackle something new, bring something different, and I think that maturity would be good for a Final Fantasy title. Now that's not to say that previous Final Fantasies haven't been there. In fact, I look at a lot of older Final Fantasies that were teen rated that if they did them today would be M rated, and this is really significant for the 7 remake, because honestly I think if we were to look at Final Fantasy 7, if you were to remake that entirely, I don't think it's far to say that it could get an M rated title. Again, the whole scenes of implied rape, well, in fact, it's not even implied rape. They're actually just trying to bloody rape Cloud's bum bum. They're just straight up trying to get to his cornholio. So, I mean, it's not even implied. But even just a lot of the darker stuff. I mean, even if you just look at Aerith's, Aerith getting run through, what the hell is that going to look like in a remake? Now, the obvious route is that they make it kind of still stylized. So even though she gets run through, you don't hear the crunching, you don't hear the guts, you don't see the blood. I think that's why it's really good that they're not doing it with the Luminous engine. I think that's really good why they're doing it with the Unreal engine, because it has that kind of stylized, almost not cartoonish, but semi-cartoonish appearance to it, where you can pull off some more unrealistic stuff. And it doesn't have to be realistic. And I think that's really important, because loads of the Final Fantasies previously, if they were done with realistic graphics, I think they would get M rated. Because that's the thing, a polygon getting killed, or a polygon getting murdered, or stuff really dark happening in polygons, it's nowhere near as affecting as how real things look now. The fact that we have the technology to make video game characters actually look like characters, I think it's definitely a whole other level. And that is why a lot of people say that age ratings today are getting a lot harsher. So they'll slap a really high age rating title for much softer stuff. And I think that's true. But I'd also see the side that softer stuff, when it's portrayed with real looking, holy crap, that looks like a real human being. Yeah, I can kind of understand why. But on the flip side to that, on the flip side to all of this, because we have those realistic graphics now, and because in movies and medias and the age of the internet and social media, we are all seeing crazy and more out there shit, and kids are, and I do believe as a whole we are becoming more desensitized, and I don't think that 15 or 16-year-olds can't see a bit of blood splatter, or they can't see Noctis break someone with their legs, or you can't see some older dude abusing a younger girl. Again, I harp on about that point all the time. I think that people are becoming desensitized, and they're tough enough now, and they're wised up enough now, that age rating titles don't have to be as strict. But I mean, that's nothing to do with Square Enix. That's nothing to do with them. They don't decide what the age rating is. They get that slapped on them. And this is the thing, if they do, as the person who works as a QA tester say, if Square Enix, the high-ups, they do go, right, we want this age rating, and then a age rating board comes out and they slap something that was much higher, rather than panic, Square Enix, rather than panic and shit the bed and go, oh, we got to get it back down, change it, rather than do that, assess the product, assess whether that is right for the product, and actually think, will this result in lower and fewer sales? Because I really don't think it would. And looking forward to 16, yeah, I'm surprising myself as someone who is not a lover of gore. And again, I'm not saying I want this to be some sort of horror movie game, even though ironically with 15 you did try to do a jump scare horror-esque style. Chapter 13, you did try to make that like a horror game, which that aspect was okay. I wouldn't say repeat it. And I'm not trying to say to make this a horror game. I'm just trying to say take it to a realistic level. If you're going to do another fantasy based in reality, which, let's face it guys, is what they're realistically going to do, because we know they are still working on Luminous engine. In fact, they said it. They're now using the Luminous engine and 15 as a graphics testing environment. Now, there's only one reason why Square Enix is going to be doing that, is if they plan to use that in the future. So while 7 might get that Unreal Engine and we can have some more hyper exaggerated stuff, we can have Red in his sailor outfit just waddling there on the spot. We can have the we can have the theatre scene where Cloud and that lot just spin off the stage, and we can have Cloud in the dress, and you know it'll probably look good on that engine. If we have a luminous engine, then unfortunately everything is going to be look super realistic, and I would like it if you do another fantasy based in reality to actually make it that. Actually have some blood, actually have some violent killings, and actually take it to a grittier level. Remember guys, a huge majority of fans said they'd like the next title to be darker and grittier. That's what the poll said. It came out as overwhelmingly that. That means that it has to be an M-rated title. And that means that possibly some of you 15 or 16 or 14 year olds, you won't be able to go and buy your title. But go get your fucking parents. Honestly, go get your parents, go get your mates. Honestly, my parents never give a shit. In fact, most parents, I think, when they buy their kids a game, they don't actually give that much for shit. And if your parents won't do it, then just PM Uncle Peasant and I'll do it for you. Don't tell anyone I said that. There he is, guys, on the table. Just wanted to do that. No, do you believe that 15 has certain elements cut because of the age rating issue? What do you think? Again, go up and do the poll for M-rated. And who knows, if we go on M-rated, you know, really think about what that could bring. I really don't want people to be thinking that I want this to be some sort of GTA 5 shitfest in the Final Fantasy. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we could tackle certain issues and certain other aspects that were rumoured in Versus 13 that really sounded attractive to me. And who knows guys, maybe if they do it M-rated, our next ship, whatever it may be, maybe they can actually make it to 3rd base. I mean, we probably won't see the 3rd base happen. I mean, Jesus, when I think about it, has anyone ever made it to 3rd base? I mean, they kind of implied it with Tifa and Cloud under the high wind. So perhaps they made it to 3rd base. Maybe Squall and Renoa got 3K on the Ragnarok. Maybe the Yuno and Tidus Lake scene had an extended edition. Maybe Edge-banged Rydia. There, I said it. I'm joking. I don't really want it for that. It was a joke. Or was it? But let's have a discussion. Let me know what you think on this subject. Until the next video. Hello.